And then hopefully we'll get time for some sharing and reflection, but I'm a bit skeptical about that because of the time pressure. Could you move on? Yeah, the next one. So I'm using the term transcultural communication. I've sneaked that in behind the intercultural communication front once I got my proposal submitted. I made a quick change. But for me, this is a reference that comes from Baker, but from the little couple of lines at the bottom is what I'm thinking when I talk about transcultural communication, is a situation, a medium for us to transcend cultural boundaries, both personal and whichever other label you would decide to attach to them, with the aim of dissolving power structures to empower people who are involved in that discussion. So if we move on to the next slide. So basically I work in the University of York, and we have lots of students from all different kinds of backgrounds, and I had quite a lot of staff members and also confident speakers of English coming and saying, my students or my classmates don't take part in seminars, it's their English, can you sort it out? You're a language teacher. And so I went into the classrooms, asked to observe what was going on, and it was really evident that there wasn't really an issue with language as such, but it was much more about the interactions between the people in the room. And so I was asked to tackle that problem, and the way that was seen appropriate in higher education was to do a module on it. And so I was asked, can you do a module on that thing that you've just talked about? I said, I think I can. And my focus was very much on the practical situation of interacting in a diverse group of people. So on the next slide, it just outlines a little bit the assessment regime. Obviously, you do a module, it has to be assessed in some way or another. Not that I was massively confident with it being assessed, but we can't avoid it in higher education, can you? So I wanted to keep it very practical. And so there was a discussion task that was a third of the mark, and then a self-evaluation. So students saying how well they thought they had performed in that discussion task. There's an example of it here on the board. And then another report on how they felt other people in that group had behaved in that group. One of my objectives is to kind of prepare students for a world of intercultural, transcultural communication, and particularly in a global workplace. So I wanted them to be able to offer advice to other people as well as reflecting on their own performance. So moving on then. Thank you.
Sorry.
Are you okay?
I'm just asking for some technical support.
Okay. So the question then was, if I'm going to ask students to participate in transcultural communication tasks, how do I grade them on their participation in these transcultural communication tasks? And I wasn't very comfortable at all with telling students what I thought was effective transcultural communication. And so I decided to hand it over to the students so I could take a step away from that very uncomfortable place of dictating what is a good or bad way to talk to somebody else from a different background. We'd had a process of assessment criteria development within the department, and I chose to use that same methodology to include students in this criteria development process. And that's what I want to echo for you now. So if I could just look at the next slide. I decided to do it as a pyramid type discussion. So I'm going to hand out, where was it? You'll get in the online, you'll get to see this in a moment, but if you could just pass one of those around for me, that'd be great. So this is how we did it in department, and I chose to do it in the same way. So students reflected individually on their experiences of communication in diverse groups. I'd like you to be sort of doing that now as I'm explaining, thinking about when it's worked well, when you have been involved. So I'm trying to put you in the position of the students now, thinking about when it's worked well and when it's felt uncomfortable, and what was happening when it worked well, and what was happening when it was uncomfortable. Because what we're going to look at is a distinction and a fail in transcultural communication. Those words really stick in my throat, but we can't get away from it. So what we're looking at is that you are now, hopefully, as kind of students of transcultural communication, thinking, when has that gone well? When have you left it feeling like it was a really productive discussion between people from different backgrounds? I'm not just talking about what some people refer to as nationality. I'm talking about just a different background. That might be a different gender. It might be a different ability. It might be a different cultural background in terms of class. It could be anything. Just people that are different from you. When has it worked well? And what were the characteristics of it? Because the students did it individually, and then they moved and did it in pairs, and then in groups of 4, and then in groups of 8, and then in groups of 16. And so we got a transcultural communication criteria set for that particular group. And I have, every time I've done it with that group. So it's not somebody else's criteria, it's their criteria every time I've run the course. It takes a while to do this with the students, and also they are practicing their transcultural communication skills and negotiation skills as they are doing it. So it's a collaborative process that practices what they are learning about at the same time. And it runs through the module. The individual bit is right at the very beginning. And so I wanted to kind of encourage you to do that today. I've managed to whiz quite quickly through the first bit to get on to the practical, and I could talk about the theoretical side of it forever, but that's not why we're here. We're here to try and build in this diverse group some assessment criteria to evaluate the way that we in this diverse group communicate with each other. So I'm going to give you both online and face-to-face. If we could move on to the next slide, that gives them the link. There we go. So hopefully online, and I'm looking there, but you're over there. Can you have a go at accessing this code? You can do it on your phone. And it will hopefully take you to a document that I don't know how closely they can see. Do you know how closely they can see with that camera? It seems crazy that you might be able to see that, but it's a grid. Just choose one. There are 15 online. Copy and paste one if you want to make another one for yourself, and they're all taken up. Claim one by putting your name at the top or writing something in it, and just have a think for a few minutes. What would you do if you were a student in my class and you were being asked to create categories and descriptors for communication in a diverse group? I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to reflect individually, without collaborating with other people, on what you would put as categories on this assessment criteria. And you're very welcome online to use that document, or if you're not comfortable with that, to copy and paste that grid onto a different document. There's no writing emails in this this workshop, I'm afraid. And just have a little bit of a reflect on what you think those categories might be.
Requiring a sign-in to get to the document.
Is it? Ah, right, I need to change the document then.
We have to do it individually first.
Yeah, it was individual. No talking now, come on. No transcultural communication allowed. I'll just change the permissions on it if I've not already done that. Oh yeah, no, my bad, sorry. Right, you should be able to access it online now.
Thanks, Victoria.
I'm now going to ask them to go into breakout rooms in pairs. So if you could set up the Zoom for breakout rooms in pairs, that would be
Could
awesome.
we just have people using the chat, the Zoom chat for that? They can.
We could probably try that.
I could do it if there's an issue with it.
Let's
Do you want me to do that now?
Yeah, you could do. Right, you're going to go, if you're online, I'm going to put you into breakout rooms in pairs. Can you just give them a minute to have a little think before we do that? I'm going to put you into breakout rooms in pairs so you can discuss what you have chosen as the categories at least, and maybe some of the descriptors. And the idea in those breakout rooms is to try and come up with one criteria set that reflects both of your personal views. So there's a little bit of negotiation. There'll be some power struggles probably in there. And it's just a way of transcending those cultural boundaries and those power boundaries to get something that's representative of both of your thoughts. Are you ready? How do you feel about your categories? Have you got something down?
Something down.
Nice. Has everybody got something down? Yeah.
Are we ready for pair work and breakout rooms online?
Yeah, go for the breakout
All right,
rooms
online
online. I
people-
can't see what you're doing, so I'll just drag you back in. I'll give you a 60-second warning online. Okay, so if you're in the room, then if you would like to get together with somebody else and just talk about what you have chosen as categories. Do you want to join another group, Adrian? Yeah, nice. Okay, so do you want to work together or do you want to, no, in pairs. So if you want to work together, pyramiding.
So what's we doing? Sharing it.
Are you all right over there?
Renata, you don't have to join because you can.
I am uninterested.
Yeah.
It's on the one nation.
You're in a room by yourself because yeah, all good. We got it.
So that's
interesting. It's interesting that there's definitely and like you say, yeah, perhaps that
So we've got 3 in the online space. Somebody who's not joined. Yeah, also.
So I don't know. I put that. So if I'm thinking about what to consider communication, it depends on the
Some clarity of expression.
okay.
Workshops, not gonna have to.
That's not very active.
yeah. And that's but do you mean in the sense that got something out of that experience of communicating to someone?
Well, I think that's different. That's for a
going
different
into
one.
the experience.
Well, I think I've got that as a different one, what I get out of it, but it's just if I finish any communication.
Going to play football.
Capturing.
Excellent. Forward.
Yes.
In? They're in. Okay, so again, whistle stop really fast. And I know it must be quite frustrating because you want to talk things through a little bit more. But I just wanted to give you the experience of doing this as a potential idea. And I'm sure you can take it away and do other things with it. I'm just curious, actually, as to what categories you chose. So if you would like to access this link to a Menti, I might have to open the Menti. Can just somebody tell me how that's going for you? Whoops. Can I get rid of that? Yeah. And I can use. Yes. Shut everybody down. How are you getting on with that? Is it not letting you in?
If I hadn't seen Joy do it, I would have embarrassed myself by going and standing.
I don't know how people. Has anybody got a? How are you doing? Can you get on that Menti, or is it blocked?
You meant to do that thing.
Yeah, you're on.
We're just waiting for you to show the next slide, it says.
All right, yeah. So I've got, oh God, dual authentication. Are you kidding?
So there you go.
So shall I move to the next
It says
slide?
25.
No. Technology, isn't it, Irene?
Every chance of-
More minutes, guys.
Don't say that, don't say that.
This is too far away.
Spaces.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, there we go, there we go. Yay.
Ah, I'd like to be able to see that on the screen. Do you know how to do that?
Yeah,
Conscious choice and not some.
Minimize.
Yes.
You're in touch with it.
Yeah, I just.
Can you get that on to there? Yes. Yay! Okay.
Hasn't changed.
It hasn't changed. In what way has it not changed?
Am I supposed to get that now?
Yeah, no, you're supposed to get this
Yeah.
on there, but not on there. That's for voting.
Oh, this is how many.
Skill set.
This is for voting. This is what you voted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so this little chart, how many people,
Yeah.
something like that.
Okay, so hopefully you can see that online. Can they see that online? If not, they can see it on the camera, but that's quite shoddy.
It's still changing.
It's changing because people are voting. Yeah, it's good, isn't it?
Oh.
Sorry, that's me.
There we go.
So many tabs. I was trying to see what was
So
going on.
you can
online.
see the bigger ones are the ones that more people have voted for. Yeah. And the smaller ones are individual things. So what a task would be now, for me, sort of research wise, was to try and find themes. So doing like a thematic analysis, which brings me on to the research that I'm doing, which is taking these grids, not from you guys, from people who have signed ethics approval forms, taking grids from 35 students and using NVivo and a kind of grounded theory-ish approach, drawing out themes to create one grid for 35 students, just to be able to show people in what it looks like, really. And so back to my slide, you've got the site here of what is actually going on with your voting. And then back to my slides. Don't know where to find them. There we go. Yeah. So I'm interested in your thoughts and experience, but I have no time to ask you about it. So hopefully you'll see me at lunch or something like that, and you can come up and say, God, that was awful, or that was interesting, why did you do it this way, or something like that. I'll be around. Hopefully you can ask me some questions. And on you and the stuff that you do, here's an example from one student group. I'm sure you can get hold of the slides, so use a link on these slides so you can have a look at that in your spare time. But I just want to give a shameless plug or plea for help. When I've completed this work, I'd like to test it. So I'd like to find some people who consider themselves to be experienced in transcultural communication to have a look at some videos and try and use the criteria to assess the students who are talking on those videos. If you would be interested in doing that, and that obviously applies to people online and face-to-face, please just drop me an email and it can just say, I am interested in the title, and I'll get back in touch with you just to test the criteria to see what you think of it. So I think that makes, sorry, yes, sir.
So I just had I just wondered, is it still the teacher that gives the grade based on those, or is there any element of student self-assessment?
That's my next step, is to introduce that. I had to include written work to please the academic quality people at the university. Otherwise, I would have done it all. You're going to tell me to shut up, aren't you? Yeah. But yeah, that would be my next step for student self-assessment, and to step further away from that kind of hierarchical position in the classroom.
Because it's so much about student perception, isn't it? If the student perceives that they've had a interculturally sensitive experience, then they have.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I don't know about that. We could talk about that at lunch. Okay, so I'm getting kicked out now.
You are.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you online.
Next one is
Oh, it's a quick turnover now.
It is.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.